forced me to make her a dress. Brianna had been my best friend since middle school, back when neither of us cared about followers or likes. But sophomore year of college, she started an Instagram about sustainable fashion and somehow blew up to 200,000 followers in 6 months. Suddenly, every conversation was about engagement rates and brand partnerships. I'd been sewing since I was 12. My mom taught me on her old Singer machine. Nothing fancy, just stuff I actually wore. Brianna knew this. She'd seen my work for years. One Tuesday afternoon, she showed up at my apartment without texting first. Her eyes were red. My grandmother died, she said, sitting on my bed. My stomach dropped. I'd met her grandma twice. This sweet Korean lady who always brought rice cakes. Brie, I'm so sorry. She had this dress. This beautiful hanbok-inspired dress she wore to my parents' wedding. It's gone now. Fire damage from her apartment. She wiped her eyes. I was wondering if maybe you could recreate it for the memorial. I hugged her. Of course. Do you have pictures? She showed me 3 blurry photos. The dress was gorgeous. Modern cut with traditional Korean design elements. Deep blue fabric with embroidered cranes. Easily 40 hours of sewing. The memorial's in 3 weeks, she added. I spent every free moment on that dress. Found the right fabric at a specialty store 40 minutes away. Spent my grocery money on it. The embroidery alone took 12 days. Hunched over my desk until my neck was cooked. A week before the memorial, my roommate showed me Brianna's Instagram. New design dropping soon. My first original piece for my sustainable fashion brand, inspired by my heritage and family history. Pre-orders opening next week. The photo was the dress. My dress. The one I was literally hemming right then. That's when it clicked. I checked the memorial date in our texts. There was no memorial. There never had been. I scrolled through her posts. Her grandmother was in a photo from 4 days ago. Very much alive. Holding a birthday cake. I just sat there for 20 minutes. Then I finished the dress exactly as planned. But I added one detail on the inner seam of the back panel in tiny letters. Made by Jordan Hayes, November 2024. Commissioned under false pretenses. Delivered the dress 3 days later. Brianna gasped when she opened it. Jordan, this is perfect. I'm launching my whole brand with this piece. 2 weeks later, Brianna's brand launch happened at some downtown loft space. Maybe 70 people showed up. Fashion bloggers, influencers, brand reps. I wasn't invited, but I showed up anyway. Brianna gave this whole speech about inspiration and heritage. She kept touching the dress, talking about the embroidery techniques she'd researched, and the countless hours she'd spent perfecting every detail. I waited until the Q&A portion. A blogger asked about her design process. It's very hands-on, Brianna said. Every stitch is intentional. This dress took me almost 2 months. Can you show us the inside seam? I called out from the back. The room went quiet. Brianna's smile froze. What? I walked forward. The inside seam. Any real designer knows the inside of a garment matters. Her face went pale. That's not really. A woman with a camera stepped closer. Actually, I would love to see the construction. Brianna couldn't say no, not without looking sus. The journalist unzipped the back and examined the inside seam. Her eyebrows went up. There's something embroidered here. She read it out loud. Made by Jordan Hayes, November 2024. Commissioned under false pretenses. The room absolutely erupted. Brianna's face went bright red. That's not. She's lying. I have the receipts, I said, pulling out my phone. Text messages where you asked me to make this. Progress photos with timestamps. The fabric receipt in my name. That's when Brianna deadass lunged at me. She grabbed my phone and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. You're trying to ruin me. 2 security guys rushed forward, pulling her back. She was screaming now, mascara running down her face. But the journalist had already taken photos. She was typing on her phone, uploading everything in real time. Brianna broke free and just ran. Bolted out the door in the dress, leaving her purse, her coat, everything. I heard later she tried to delete her entire Instagram in the Uber home, but it was too late. Screenshots were everywhere. The brand reps left immediately. One stopped next to me. We're looking for actual designers. You interested? Within 2 days, Brianna's sponsorships dropped her. Her follower count tanked. The local news ran a segment on influencer fraud. She showed up at my apartment 3 days later, still wearing the dress. She looked like she hadn't slept. Please, just say it was a misunderstanding. I'll pay you. I'll do anything. I closed the door in her face. My friend forced me to make her a dress. Brianna had been my best friend since middle school, back when neither of us cared about followers or likes. But sophomore year of college, she started an Instagram about sustainable fashion and somehow blew up to 200,000 followers in 6 months. Suddenly, every conversation was about engagement rates and brand partnerships. I'd been sewing since I was 12. My mom taught me on her old Singer machine. Nothing fancy, just stuff I actually wore. Brianna knew this. She'd seen
My husband promised his 26-year-old publicist my life. He mistakenly CC'd me on an email to his lawyer, ensure she gets nothing in the transition. The email arrived at 2:15 p.m. I was polishing the silver for his upcoming gala. My breath didn't catch. I sat down and smiled. A cold, sharp, terrifying smile. Because the message meant to ruin me had accidentally handed me the detonator to his existence, and he had absolutely no clue. Let me tell you about my grandfather. He passed away 4 years before my wedding. A cutthroat commercial landlord who trusted absolutely no one. Before his final heart attack, he transferred the historic 12,000 square foot Soho building, where my husband's flagship restaurant operates, into a generation-skipping trust. It was ironclad, registered under a corporate proxy, and completely immune to marital property laws. Silent, bulletproof. 3 weeks before he died, my grandfather told me, I've anchored you to the bedrock, so when the wolves come, you can just collapse the roof. I thought he was being cynical. He wasn't. My husband was a celebrity chef with a massive ego. He could taste a complex sauce and identify 14 ingredients blindfolded, but he was financially illiterate. He never once looked at the commercial lease for his own establishment. He assumed his name on the marquee meant he owned the bricks. Gravity just orbited his culinary genius. For the first time in 8 years, I worshipped his narcissism. I watched the afternoon traffic crawl down Broadway. Then I made a call. The commercial broker I contacted handled hostile acquisitions and didn't ask questions. He was sitting in my living room by 4 p.m. I demanded a 72-hour close, cash only, selling the property as a gut rehab development site at a massive discount. Priced this low, a prime Soho corner will spark a vicious bloodbath by midnight, he warned. Perfect. Wire the funds to my Zurich accounts by Monday. The demolition crews take possession Tuesday. Have the contract signed before his dinner service ends. He delivered exactly as promised. By 11 p.m., a $22 million all-cash offer offer landed from a luxury condo developer. I signed the digital paperwork without shedding a single tear. Then I walked into his test kitchen. He had a collection of 40 custom-forged Japanese Damascus steel knives. I didn't smash anything. I simply boxed up every knife, printed a shipping label, and donated the collection to a Bronx culinary program. I packed one vintage leather duffel with my clothes, my passport, and my grandfather's pen. Everything else, I permanently abandoned. Monday morning, the bank confirmed the massive wire. $22 million safely vanished into the Swiss Alps. Tuesday at dawn, I surrendered the master keys. 4 hours later, I was sipping matcha in a first-class cabin, bound for Tokyo. I forwarded the lawyer's email back to my husband with 4 simple words: enjoy your new transition. Then I tossed my phone into the terminal trash bin. 10 days later was the highly publicized 10-year anniversary gala for his restaurant. He arrived in a chauffeured town car, his young publicist clinging tightly to his arm, ready to greet the city's elite. He strutted up to the entrance. Clink, rattle, the heavy iron gates were padlocked shut. He yelled at a security guard, assuming it was a prank. The guard just pointed at the massive neon demolition permits pasted across the glass doors. He frantically dug for his keys, but the locks had been completely replaced. The door violently swung open from the inside. A burly site manager in a hard hat stepped out, glaring down at the tuxedoed chef. "We have a strict perimeter," the foreman barked loudly. "Step off the construction site immediately." The foreman shoved a harsh legal notice against my husband's chest. "Building was sold to Apex Development last week. Your lease was terminated upon sale. Have a nice night." The heavy doors slammed shut, kicking up a cloud of century-old dust. His frantic lawyer confirmed the total devastation minutes later. The trust, the proxy shell, the ironclad sale. No marital claim, no operating location, no legal recourse whatsoever. The flagship was utterly gone. Full story on the channel, link below. My husband promised his 26-year-old publicist my life. He mistakenly CC'd me on an email to his lawyer, ensure she gets nothing in the transition. The email arrived at 2:50. My husband promised his 26-year-old publicist my life. He mistakenly CC'd me on an My husband promised his 26-year-old publicist. My daughter begged me to ride the carousel just one more time. I had no idea her stubbornness would spare our lives. My 5-year-old was throwing a massive fit because she wanted another turn on the painted horses. The last few months had been brutal, and I was dead on my feet from working double shifts at the corner diner just to pay our exorbitant rent. I was seconds away from dragging her to the bus stop anyway, but then I looked down at her tear-streaked face and thought about the sheer trauma she had endured since December. Her universe collapsed when my younger sister passed away unexpectedly, forcing us to relocate to a tiny, drafty Chicago apartment. She didn't deserve this chaos, so I shoved my transit pass into my coat pocket and sighed, "All right, sweetie, one more ride." Her expression transformed, beaming like I had handed her $1 million. She dashed back to the ticket booth, and I stood by the metal railing, watching her wave every time her white horse circled. "Look, Mama, I'm flying." One ride magically morphed into 3, then 4. I stopped checking my watch entirely. I was mesmerized seeing my little girl actually smile. She had been dealing with terrible night terrors since we moved. Her kindergarten teacher called me twice last week because she spent recess sitting alone by the fence. But right now, under those carnival lights, she was carefree. I felt a sharp pang of guilt for almost dragging her away. I had been so consumed with past due bills and eviction notices that I hadn't truly been paying attention to her, so I let her stay. We bought a stale churro. We watched a street magician do cheap card tricks while I sat on a concrete planter, letting myself breathe for the first time in forever. When the street lamps flickered on, I told her we had to catch the 6:10 bus. She didn't argue. She just wrapped her sticky fingers around my hand and whispered, "Thank you, Mama." Those words shattered my heart. I tapped our passes on the sticky bus scanner and pulled her onto my lap. We took the long route down Fullerton Avenue because she loved looking at the neon signs. I wasn't stressing about the time anymore, but when we finally turned onto our block, the first thing I noticed was the barricade of squad cars. At least 8 of them, sirens blaring, sealing off the entrance to our brick building. I saw shattered glass covering the sidewalk, glistening under the red and blue lights. The front glass doors were completely blown out, exposing the lobby. I stopped dead in my tracks, squeezing my daughter's hand so hard she whimpered. A tactical police officer in heavy SWAT gear ran toward us, yelling at us to step back behind the yellow tape. I couldn't process his words. I just pointed numbly at the 3rd floor window, our window which was now a gaping black hole. He grabbed his shoulder radio, frantically calling in our descriptions, asking if we were the residents of Unit 3B. I nodded slowly. Yes, that's our home. It's just me and my little girl. My daughter buried her face in my coat, terrified. A victim advocate ushered us into the back of an ambulance to keep warm while the police secured the perimeter. They mentioned an armed barricade situation, but the words sounded like they were underwater. I just rocked my daughter against my chest, whispering hollow promises. We spent the night on uncomfortable plastic cots at a nearby community center. I finally got my daughter to sleep around midnight. At exactly 2:15 a.m., a plainclothes detective walked across the squeaky gym floor and pulled up a folding chair next to my cot. He leaned in, his face dead serious. "Ma'am, I need to brief you on what happened in your unit." I braced myself, assuming a burglar had panicked. We neutralized the suspect after a tense standoff. He was heavily armed with a shotgun and zip ties. My blood ran cold. It was Arthur, your building's maintenance supervisor. The room tilted violently. We found a shrine of photographs of you in his basement toolkit. He bypassed your deadbolt at exactly 4:45 p.m. He knew your exact work schedule. He knew the precise minute you and your daughter usually walked through that door. I grabbed the edge of the cot to anchor myself. If you hadn't been delayed, you would have walked directly into an ambush. I turned my head to look at my daughter, snoring softly on the thin blanket, entirely unaware that her stubborn demand for one more carousel ride had kept us out of a monster's grasp. My daughter begged me to ride the carousel just one more time. I had no idea her stubborn.
You simply lack the entrepreneurial pedigree. My brother smirked as the family explicitly wrote me out of their legacy trust. So, when I founded my own hospitality empire, I launched my flagship resort and blacklisted their names at the door. The frantic voicemails started before the ribbon was even cut. I have always been the financial afterthought. The son assigned the folding chair at holidays. The one told the investment meeting was at 4 p.m. when it was actually at 2 p.m. 3 years ago, my older brother Julian orchestrated a massive real estate syndicate. My father called me on a Tuesday morning. His tone was clipped. David, listen, we are restructuring the Chicago high-rise deal. We had to return your initial deposit. You understand, right? I stared at the returned $15,000 cashier's check I had scraped together for 2 years. You were kicking me out of the family LLC? Julian grabbed the receiver. I heard his condescending chuckle. Let's be realistic, David, he barked. You simply lack the entrepreneurial pedigree. You are a mid-level accountant. Why waste equity on someone who doesn't even comprehend commercial zoning? The line went dead. I did not scream. I simply deposited the check and went back to the drawing board. I am an actuary by trade. Calculating risk is what I do best. 8 months later, I met Elena. She was an aggressive commercial architect with a lethal eye for design. When I explained my family's betrayal, she just poured me coffee. Revenge, she said, is a blueprint best drawn in secret. When we secured the funding for our first project, I scrubbed my LinkedIn and swore my core team to secrecy. We purchased a pristine cliffside in Aspen, a location developers spent a decade fighting over. I secured the zoning because I spent 2 years crunching local tax algorithms. I did not want a petty family feud. I wanted an undeniable triumph. The VIP launch invitations went out 4 months ago. I invited state senators, tech CEOs, Elena's design firm, and 3 billionaires. I did not invite my father. I did not invite my mother. And I certainly did not invite Julian. The cover was blown 72 hours before the grand opening. A major financial magazine ran a cover story on the new $65 million eco resort, featuring a full-page portrait of Elena and me. My phone, blissfully silent regarding my family for years, started violently buzzing. First, my father. David, we just saw the Forbes spread. There must be an oversight with our VIP passes. What time is the jet charter tomorrow? I ignored it. I switched to airplane mode and reviewed the catering menu. The evening of the launch was immaculate. I wore a custom-tailored midnight blue tuxedo. I looked like the Titan Julian claimed I could never become. By the time I walked into the grand lobby, my blocked voicemails numbered in the 50s. David, you are a sociopath. Leaving your brother out in the cold after the Chicago deal went bankrupt? Mom is having a panic attack. Call me instantly. We are standing in the valet circle and the concierge is threatening to call the authorities. Let us in. I checked the perimeter security cameras. There they were. My parents and Julian, shivering in designer coats, arguing with massive bouncers outside the frosted glass. They had zero equity, yet they showed up expecting their rightful place in the penthouse. I walked down to the valet podium myself. I stood behind the reinforced glass, adjusted my lapels, and stared at them. Julian was practically frothing at the mouth. David, tell these apes to open the doors. Do you know how humiliating this is? Our investors are watching. I pushed the intercom button. I kept my voice flat. Julian, you told me I lacked the entrepreneurial pedigree. I realized a luxury resort is for people who understand high-level partnerships. Since you just bankrupted your only asset, you are a massive liability to my brand. David, please, my mother pleaded, her breath fogging the glass. We are family. We need a bailout. You are a bad investment, I replied, and you are loitering. If you are still blocking my valet lane in 3 minutes, security will have your leased vehicles towed. I turned around and walked back to the gala. The reception was flawless. As we sat down for the tasting menu, my phone lit up with a bypass number. The text was pure desperation. I hope the market crashes. You think you are invincible? You are a ruthless, disloyal snake. I snapped a photo of my vintage scotch, the mountain sunset reflecting in the crystal, with the multi-million-dollar ballroom in the background. I typed one final response. The caviar is beluga. It is exquisite. Too bad you simply lack the pedigree. Then I dropped the phone into a potted fern. I have never breathed easier. Everyone claims that a rising tide lifts all boats, but they forget some people are just anchors. I chose to cut the rope. You simply lack the entrepreneurial pedigree. My brother smirked as the family